For those of you that don't know me, I have been a Challenger player since set 3, and in this video, I'm going to be giving you guys a guide on how to climb in patch 14.7b. So, this is filmed after the B patch has hit, in which they nerfed Blue Kale, they slightly nerfed Yone, and they also removed Twin Terror. The meta right now, after the B patch, is a pretty AD heavy meta, in my opinion. The reason why is because there are a lot more boards that you have access to in the early and mid game where you could streak with AD openers as opposed to like something like AP. For example, in the early game, you could play around Darius, you could play around Yone, you could play around Duelists, you could play around Sivir. Whereas AP, you're pretty limited in your early and mid game options. It's pretty much only Ahri in my opinion. There aren't really any other good AP item holders. I think if you cap out late game with AP, it's still around the same strength as like the late game AD board, but overall in the early and mid game, the AD like line is a lot more flexible, which is why I think it's very AD heavy meta and a tempo meta. I think right now in the early game, the openers you really want to be looking out for are going to be Duelist and Umbral. This is where if you get like a 2-star Darius, 2-star Yasuo, and like a random Behemoth, which is Yorick. Faded is really good. Usually want to play this if you have like a 2-star Yasuo, 2-star Ahri. Usually when you get faded, usually play into the vertical faded line, which is really, really strong still. Fortune, you just full loss streak until you have 2 lives left, and then you cash out and try to go 9. Story Weaver, there are a few options you can play into, but the Story Weaver opener is really strong because if you get Sivir 2, Garen 2, and like a Teemo, Sivir is one of the best AD item holders, and Teemo holds your AP items really well. This is a super smooth transition into 4 Trickshot, and it's also a good way to go fast line as well, or play around 7 Story Weaver. And Heavenly is also the last really good opener I would look out for. Heavenly is good because you play into both Duelists and you can play into Yone as well, 2 of the best reroll comps in the current patch. I would say that in the current patch, if you don't have any of these 5 openers, generally your game plan is just 5 lose streak until level 6 and you want to play around a level 6 spike. Your options at level 6 are going to be 4 Ghostly Senna, 5 Faded, 4 Duelists, Heavenly Yone, 5 Story Weaver, or Reroll Kog. Reroll Kog you don't actually spike at 6. This is just like an alternative for like a 5 lose streak opener. You could play into Reroll Kog as well just because Kogmaw is a 1-cost reroll comp. So jumping into the comps. In the S tier, we have the Legendary board, Reroll Yone, Reroll Duelists, Bruiser Trickshots, and Fine Vintage. I'll go into how to play this later. It's kind of different from like the normal comps you generally play around. In the A tier, we have Vertical Faded, Reroll Story Weavers, Vertical Story Weavers, Reroll Senna, and Reroll Kogmaw. Here's the generic econ guide, and I also updated the augments for the newest patch. And by the time this video is posted, as always, I will be streaming, so check me out if you have any questions below. I also have another YouTube channel where I post VODs of my gameplay, where I go through my thought process on each turn. So I would really appreciate if you guys checked out that channel as well and subscribe. Without further ado, let's jump right into the guide. So the first comp on the list is just going to be Yone. So this comp did slightly get nerfed in the B patch, but I think that this comp is still in the S tier for a variety of reasons. Reason 1 is that one of the strongest early game boards you could play, for example this, plays really, really well into Yone. So in the early game, you're just flexing around all the Umbral Heavenly units. If you're carrying the Darius, you want to flex the Qiyana, and if you're carrying a Yone 1, you want to flex the Kha'Zix. You could take this board actually straight to 7 usually. This is a win streak board, and then at level 6, you just play like a random Kindred, or you just play a random Heavenly unit. Going back to the board, there are a few different ways to itemize Yone. I would say Yone really wants Titans, 1 healing, and 1 damage / healing. So Titans BT is good, and any 4 of these combinations is pretty good as well. I think best in slot doesn't really matter too much for Yone because this comp really relies on you winning 3-2 to 4-1. Because sometimes like you usually play this comp from like a lose streak, you just roll for like a stable board at 6, and then you just slam whatever, and then you go straight to 7, and then you look for your level 7 Yone board. In this comp, the board at level 7 is just going to be 4 Heavenly, 4 Reaper. Kindred is going to be your Morello holder, and then at level 7, you really want to find that Kayn for Reaper, and he's going to be your secondary carry. The thing with this comp is that you don't actually need 3-star Yone to top 4. For example, you could actually play this comp contested and still like top 4. So if you're like not contested at all, best case scenario, you just reroll 3-star Yone. But let's say like there's another player. You have 2 options. You can either try to roll before him and go for the 3-star Yone, or you could just hit the Yone 2 at level 7 and then push levels, and then try to play around Morgana late game for Morgana and Wukong late game for Sage and Ghostly with Kayn. If you have like a fully itemized Kayn, Yone, Morello, and Morgana, it's still usually a top 4. And then the board is usually going to look like this. You just drop Soraka from Morgana. And then the alternative, or like the special case, is if you get like a heavenly spat, you just stick the heavenly spat onto the kindred, and then this will give you 7 heavenly. Usually I don't like playing the Soraka unless I have the heavenly spat, because this gives me the 7 breakpoint. Because Soraka as a heavenly unit, I think she gives AP, and it's not actually that beneficial to like the rest of your AD heavy team. But basically this is Yone, pretty straightforward. Yeah, pretty broken. Next comp on the list is going to be Reroll Duelists. So I think this comp is S tier as well, because this is another 1v9 comp with Volibear. Well, I guess 2v9 because Volibear goes infinite, but Tristana deals out like half the damage. This comp has a very similar opener to the Yone comp as well, and similar itemization. So like, let's say like going back to the Darius board, if you slam like Titan's BT, you could actually flex both Yone and Volibear. So like if you're contested, you just play into Duelist and both of you will be just fine. Game plan for this is pretty simple. Early game, you play a strong board. One of the strengths for Duelist is like you have a very strong early and mid game. Mid game, you could slight roll for like either a 4 Duelist breakpoint or like 3 or 4 heavenly, or if you have a lot of pairs, go ahead. And then at level 7, you just want to slow roll above 50 gold for Volley 3 and Tristana 3. I would say that both of these units are really important, so you really need to be able to hit both, or you will probably bot 4. There are a few ways to itemize Volibear. It's usually Titans +2, so this is his best in my opinion. But he could also hold like AP-ish or like tanky items. So for example, Crown Guard is a good option for him. Gunblade is another good healing item for him. Spark is pretty good. Worst case scenario, he just holds your Sunfire Cape. But he's still like pretty good. He's a beast. Tristana just holds all your generic AD items, so this is an option. This is an option with GS, i.e. Last Whisper. She could also hold your red buff as well. Ideally though, like you want to put like the red buff on the Irelia. So like you just put like a random Morello or red buff on like a shitter duelist for temporarily, and then once you go 8 and find the Irelia, you move the red buff onto her. So once you hit both, you usually want to push levels, and you could either slot in. There's a few things you can slot in. You can slot in another Dragon Lord, so it could be Janna, it could be Rakan. You could also slot in Wukong for Sage as well. And if you get Sage, you really want to be second rowing your Tristana, so she gets that extra Omnibam. And best case scenario, you get a Duelist +1. You can play 8 Duelists at level 8, which is actually extremely broken. Usually if you get 8 Duelists, you have 3-star Volley, 3-star Tristana, you usually win the lobby. It actually beats out every single or most legendary boards, because Volibear just goes infinite and nobody could kill this unit. Yeah, that's pretty much it for Duelists, another S tier comp. So the next S tier comp on the list is going to be Kaisa. So Kaisa right now is actually pretty good in the current meta. The reason why is because I think Kaisa is one of the only 4-cost units that is able to kill a 3-star Volibear or a 3-star Yone, because she has so much a single target burst. I think for this comp, it's really good because you also stabilize really hard at level 8, and you're also playing around a lot of cheap-ish units, so you could go 9. So for example, like you're playing around Sivir, Teemo, Riven, Aatrox, 1 and 2 costs. Usually you just need 1 2-star Galio or 1 2-star Sylas and a 2-star Kaisa, and you're safe to go straight to 9 and cap out with Xayah and Udyr. So there are a few ways you can itemize Kaisa. I really enjoy putting GS and Last Whisper +1 on her. I like GS because, again, to deal with the reroll comps, this lets her like one-shot like the Yones and the Volibears. Last Whisper for shred, and you usually just want like a 3rd damage item. But these both options are also like a fine alternative. So you can go Shojin, you can also go Gunblade as well. But all 3 of these usually use Last Whisper. I guess if you have Even Shot on your front line, you don't really need Last Whisper. But yeah, you can just go 3rd damage instead. And for Kale, you usually like going Red Kale. Teemo is probably the best Morello spreader in this comp. So Teemo stays in the entire game, you get him. And usually just want to stack all of your tank items on whoever you 2-star first between Sylas or Galio and go straight to 9. So when you go 9, your board is going to look like this. You find the Udyr for 3 Ink Shadow, get the Ink Shadow item. Depending on whether or not it's defensive or offensive, you could either put it on the Xayah or like the Galio, Sylas, or Udyr. Xayah just holds all of your random ass AD attack speed items from Carousel, so you just stick whatever on her because it's already late game. And then usually, like if you're able to get to this point, 2-star Udyr, 2-star Xayah, it's usually a top 2, and this comp is really good. But that's pretty much it. Pretty straightforward. Super easy transition from like this Story Weaver opener. You keep most of these units like the entire game. And pretty easy to play and to climb if you want to climb in the current patch. So next comp is going to be Fine Vintage. I think this comp is pretty unintuitive to play because basically this comp, you want to turn all of your completed items into support items. And the carries in this comp are going to be the ZZ Rot portals. the interactions between the Zeroth portals combined with the other support items and like certain traits like Heavenly and Dragon Lords just makes these Zeroths really, really strong for no reason. The game plan for Fine Vintage is different depending on whether you get it at 2-1 or 3-2, but I'll go into that later. I just want to go over like the boards you want to play first. So in the early and mid game for Fine Vintage, the boards don't actually matter. You just want to play strongest board, and you just want to have the Zeroths pop out no matter what board you play to support your team. And as the game goes on, you're going to slowly get like these Aegises and like these Zeeks. And then at level 9, you want to sort of decide like what kind of level 9 board you want to play. You have 3 options. The first option is going to be the 7 Storyweaver variant. In this variant, you're basically having the Zeroths tank for you, and your Kale is going to be your main source of damage, and Aurelia will support the team with like red buff or Merlot. In this one, you want to go Shred Blue, and Kale will Shred for your Zeroths and do a ton of damage. Variation 2, you want to play around Vertical Heavenly instead. In this case, you're playing around all the Heavenly units with Dragon Lord. Heavenly will buff the Zeroths, and Dragon Lord will give the Zeroths more attack speed. And in Variation 3, I think this is like the best variation. You're just going to be playing all of the Legendary units with the Zeroths as your support. Your primary carry is going to be Aurelia, and then your support units are going to be like Azir, Wukong, Ornn to give you your whole team more items. And I think one tip is that although you want to transform all of your items into like these support items, you really want to save 2 components for some sort of anti-heal, or there are some units you just won't be able to kill, like Volibear or Yone, because you need to like anti-heal them or they just won't die. So I just like having like a red buff or Merlot on the Aurelia for late game. So depending on whether you get at 2-1 or 3-2, the playstyle is different. At 2-1, you pretty much just slam everything at stage 2, and then you just slowly convert your shit into like these support items. But if you get the Fine Vintage augment at 3-2, you actually don't want to immediately start converting your items yet, because you want to win 3-2 and 3-3 if you already had a strong board. So the game plan if you get at 3-2 is like you win 3-2, you win 3-3, and then you could like full sell and start converting your items, and your game plan is to lose 3-5, 3-6, and 4-1, which is 3 rounds exactly for all of your items to turn into support items, and then you spike it 4-2 again on your roll down. You don't want to sack 3-2, because if you lose 3-2, 3-3, and then 3-5, and then you convert all your support items onto 3-6, you basically break your lose streak into going into neutrals, which is pretty bad for you anyway, because when you get the items at neutrals, you have to sack anyway. So that's why it's better to like win 3-2 and 3-3 reverse. Sorry if that's like a little confusing. Going to item priority, the prio for this comp or the items is going to be Zeroth first, and then Aegis is the second best, Virtue of the Martyr third best, and then you want to go Randuin's as fourth, and then if you don't get Randuin's, you go for Zeeks. And you want to buff your Zeroths only. And then at level, you just try to go fast 9, play strongest board at all times, and then slowly make your way into a board like this. Yeah, and that's pretty much it for Fine Vintage. So last S tier comp is just going to be the standard Bill Gates boards. There is the AP variant and the AZ variant. In the AP variant, your main carry is Hui, and your secondary carry is going to be Azir. If you're playing this variant, you're just playing Azir with the Dryad combo, Ornn, and Udyr for 2 Behemoth, and you're flexing all the Dragon Lords and the Heavenly units. Itemization wise, Hui is going to be your Merlot holder, 1 mana and 1 AP item is good, and then Azir like Shiv plus 2. I think the only issue with this comp is that this comp kind of has some trouble against Yone 3 and Volibear 3. The reason why is because although Hui does a shit ton of damage and heals your whole team, it doesn't really have that much single target damage aside from Azir. So chances are, if you're on Hui 2 and your whole board is upgraded and you're stuck on an itemless Azir 1, if you're 1 HP, you will still get farmed by the Yone 3 and the Volibear 3 players, and you will still go bot 4 if you're 1 HP. But that's the only thing. The AZ variant is you're just playing around Aurelia instead. This variation does do slightly better against Yone and Volibear because you have Wukong. Like you're usually itemizing Wukong as well and Aurelia, and they do a lot more single target DPS. And for this comp, you're just playing the Storyweaver package with Galio and Riven, and because you're playing Riven, you also get Ultras in with Rakan and Soraka. Lee Sin goes in because you need a duelist and also gives you Dragon Lord. And yeah, that's pretty much it. You could usually only play into either of these comps if you have like a super high roll win streak opener or you're playing Fortune. Just be careful with the Volibear boards. Try not to be 1 HP. And yeah, that's it. So in the A tier, we're going to have Vertical Faded. I think this comp is A tier if you don't have a spat, but if you have a spat, this becomes S tier because you can get 7 faded at level 8 without hitting the set. So this comp is really strong because it, again, transitions from a very strong early game board. So in the early game, if you get like a Yasuo 2 RA2, this is a pretty good indicator that you should probably play into the faded board. The faded board is a sustain comp. So in the early game, you generally want to link Yasuo and Ahri. But in the mid game, once you hit the Thresh, you usually want to link Thresh and Yasuo and try to get into 5 faded. What this basically does is it gives your entire faded team a lot of armor magic resist and a lot more base HP. And you want to itemize Philios in a way where he scales and you will slowly wither down like the rest of their team over time. So like stuff like Ascension is really good. If you get like needlessly large gem, it's really good as well. Gwyn's is good because it scales. Red buff slowly like burn them to death. And then like usually like you usually want to slight roll at level 6 to, for a stable board. So like what I like to do is like I roll for like 5 faded at level 6. So I just drop the Caitlyn here and this would be my level 6 board. Alternatively, you can also play around like a 3 faded board. So you probably like drop, and then you play like another Arcanist like Nico and another Heavenly unit. This is fine as well. And then after you get like stable board at level 6, you go straight to 8, and then you usually play around a board like this. So if you have the spat, you put this, usually really want the spat on the Ornn. It gives him like a 2 billion like shield, and because it's a sustain comp, Ornn will constantly farm items for like the rest of your team, and you will eventually like wither them down with like a lot more items. This also lets you hit 7 faded without finding the set at level 8, which is fucking broken. Your secondary carry is going to be your Syndra. Her base is going to be blue buff, death cap, and Nashers. If you can get to set, you don't want Gunblade because set at his faded bonus is it gives your entire team Omnivamp. So you already really have the built-in Gunblade, so you actually heal more from Syndra if you have more damage on her. But the level 8 board is just going to be this. And then if you have the faded spat, you probably play Ornn, drop Yasuo for a Mumu. And then your board will look like this. Best in slot set is going to be GA +2 in my opinion. GA is good because it guarantees him the reset, and then he ults in and then just he heals back to full and he 1v9s the rest of their team. I like pairing GA with like Titans and GS to melt the tanks. But you can also go like pure like damage, like pure AD is pretty good as well. Hodge is good as well. Double Titans, all pretty good because he already has like the built-in Omnivamp. What I learned from playing this comp a lot is that I think that 3-star Aphelios is in most cases not worth going for. The reason why is because if you go for 3-star Aphelios, the chances are that you won't be able to go 9 to find the set for 7 faded and the Omnivamp bonus. I think it's more valuable in this comp to hit the set than to find a 3-star Aphelios. Like the average placement, I think from hitting the set is better than finding a 3-star Aphelios, but I think Aphelios does win more games, I will say. So usually, like when you're playing faded, I would probably only go for the Aphelios if you have like a random Nico, like a shitter Nico or something that you want to use. In general, I would usually just push 9, try to find the set, and usually like that could usually actually win you a lot of games, just finding the set and then going for set 2. Yeah, that's pretty much it for faded. So another reroll comp you could play is going to be Reroll Ghostly. I would probably only play towards this comp if your tattoo is Fury, Bombardment, or Protection. I would probably especially look out for this comp if you have Tattoo of Protection because this tattoo is BIS in this comp. You could easily check what tattoo the Ink Shadow is. I actually learned this recently. At stage 1-1, you could open up the team builder and just put in an Ink Shadow unit and hover over the trait. It'll basically tell you like what the 3 breakpoint item is, and then depending on which one it is, you can just decide whether or not you want to angle towards this comp. But the game plan for this comp is at 3-2, you want to roll down for this exact board. If you don't find the Alawi, you just play like a random shitter for now. But you usually want like at least a 2-star Shen or a 2-star Senna. Itemization wise, Senna really likes Last Whisper +2. She uses either of these tattoos well, but otherwise you just go traditional AD items like Deathblade, IE, GS is good as well, Gwyn's is fine. And then Shen really likes tank items like Redemption, Gargoyles, Vow is okay as well, Sunfire. Slow roll at level 6 for 3-star Senna and 3-star Shen. And then afterwards, you push level 8 and play the remaining 2 Ghostly units, Morgana and Kayn. For this comp, usually if you hit 3-star Shen, Senna, and get to this point, it's usually like a top 3. But there are times where, like, let's say you just want to stabilize with this board and you don't want to go for Shen and Senna. It's perfectly okay to go level 8 and just play around 6 Ghostly and play for top 4. In this variation, because you don't have these units 3-starred, you do have the option of dropping out of Senna for like a better unit. So for example, the variant where you don't play around the reroll units is probably going to be something like this. You drop Senna for Kaisa, and then you're still playing 6 Ghostly, but in this case, this lets you tech in Uzier, which is a way better unit than Jax. Yeah, that's pretty much it for Ghostly. A pretty good option you play towards, because this comp could also play into from a lose streak. 5 lose into this comp, and then you just roll down for this exact board, and you usually win streak all of 3-2 to 4-1. So the main reroll 1-cost comp you want to look out for in the current patch is going to be Kogmaw. I think Kogmaw is really, really good, and the comp is pretty simple to play. And I would also say this comp becomes S tier if you get the mythic spat, but without it, it's probably in the A tier. So in this comp, you basically want to 5 lose streak into level 4, 8 out of 10 EXP, roll to 33 gold for Malphite, Cho'Gath, Kog'Maw, and Caitlyn. The priority here is going to be probably Cho'Gath first, and then Kog'Maw, and then Caitlyn, and then Malphite. These two are optional. You kind of really do want these 2 units though. And then you naturally level to 5, and then you slow roll above level 50. And then once you're up at stage 4-1, that's when you want to all in, hit everything, and then push levels. Best in slot Kog'Maw is going to be blue buff, Nashers, and Gunblade, and then Cho'Gath just holds all 3 of your tank items. I think you really do want like some kind of MR shred, so you either want like Spark on Cho'Gath or like Shiv on like your Caitlyn or something. After you push levels, your board is going to look something like this. So this is the standard variant without the mythic spat that you want to play towards. Level 9, you're just playing 2 more mythic units. Azir's your second invoker, and then these are going to be your additional tank units. If you get the mythic +1 though, this gives you the opportunity to play into a 7 mythic board at level 8. And then this board is really, really strong as well because you're also carrying your Caitlyn. If you have like extra random items for Caitlyn, Shojin's like probably the single best item on her because this just lets her get like 2 casts off. Usually if you have a 3-star Caitlyn and you cast once, it one-shots anything in the backline, and it's pretty good for like scamming random fights that you aren't supposed to win. Yeah, that's pretty much it for Cho'Gath and Kog'Maw. Sums up my flex guide for patch 14.7b. If you guys enjoyed this video, would really appreciate the YouTube sub or follow on Twitch. By the time this video is posted, I will be streaming, so come check me out. And also check out my other YouTube channel where I post VODs and explain my thought process in each game. That's it for now, and I'll see you guys next time.